As the war dragged on into 1967, street rhetoric grew rougher.
How much time have you spent there, Martha?
In Vietnam?
Yes.
14 months.
14 months?
Yes, sir.
Are you disturbed about the demonstrations like we had a month or so ago against our...
No, I just don't pay any attention to them anymore. We got too many good Americans.
99% of the people in this country are terrific Americans and disagree entirely with flag burnings, carrying enemy colors, giving medical supplies to the enemy, etc.
A few congressmen, led by Senator Fulbright, now question Johnson's right to wage war without a declaration of war.
Would the president, if there was no resolution, be with or without constitutional authority to send U.S. soldiers to South Vietnam in the numbers that are there today, if there were no resolution?
It would be my view, as I indicated, Mr. Chairman, that he does have that authority.
It's a difficult doctrine for me to agree to, that the Congress cannot control the President of the United States from the standpoint of the use or the withholding of the troops of this country abroad. I simply can't go along with that doctrine.
But didn't that resolution authorize the President to use the armed forces of the United States in whatever way was necessary? Didn't it?
Well,
what could a declaration of war have done? That would have given the President more authority and a clearer voice of the Congress of the United States than that did.
Well, it was not the country's decision to land combat troops in Vietnam. The country hasn't made that decision. The President has made that decision.
The administration stood firm, and Congress continued to vote money for the war. Troop levels continued to rise. Though some men fled the country to avoid service, most complied with the draft. Some who opposed conscription on grounds of conscience burned their draft cards. Some joined an anti-draft organization called the Resistance.
The Resistance was founded in an attempt to organize explicit public non-cooperation with conscription through the action of returning draft cards to the government. Very simple, open, public declarations that we would not cooperate, and if the government intended to enforce the Selective Service Act, then it was going to have to send us to jail. Well, October 16th had been the date that we had set when we first started the resistance for the first national draft card return, during which all around the country, and as it turned out in 18 different cities, there would be demonstrations at which young people would collect draft cards and give them to the federal government. And in San Francisco, which was one of the two largest demonstrations on that date in the country, 2,000 of us gathered on the steps of the federal building in San Francisco.
And that if it takes our lives to change this country, then that's what's going to happen.
And then we got this basket and announced on the bullhorn, okay, the time had come, and out goes the basket. There's this scene of all these hands coming up holding draft cards, dropping them into the basket, and the basket circulates through the crowd and comes back up to the front. You know, we sort of look at it and get ready to go inside, and then all of a sudden from the back of the crowd, these shouts start coming, more, back here, we want it, send the basket. It was an attempt to call the question on the rest of the anti-war movement, to say put up or shut up, no more of this screaming against the war and then coming home and making sure you have your student deferment in your pocket. If you were going to be against the war, then put your body where your mouth was.
So we coined a slogan from protest to resistance, which was that you'd keep marching and rallying, but that we would step up the pace of nonviolent civil disobedience.
The new tactics were tested in the March on the Pentagon, October 1967.
It is clear from the evidence that I have that this is a part of a move by the communists, especially of North Vietnamese government, to divide the American people, disrupt our war effort, discredit our government for the entire world. The leaders of North Vietnam consider the march on the Pentagon tomorrow as much of their war effort as the guerrilla warfare in South Vietnam and the North Vietnamese army assaulting our troops on the battlefield. Those who participate in these demonstrations tomorrow will be, in effect, cooperating with and assisting our enemy.
God bless America! God bless America!
There is no freedom in a land where fear and hate
I want to ask you what has happened to a country whose political objectives must be secured at the end of a bayonet.
More than 55,000 demonstrated, united in opposition to the draft and the war, but divided on many other issues. The protesters, who were mainly students, faced other young Americans who were already in uniform. Most protested peacefully, but 5,000 rushed the Pentagon, some taunting and cursing the troops. More than 600 were arrested during the march.
Take them on back, lock them up.
The demonstration had no impact on policy, but it outraged some officials, including the head of Selective Service.
To me, a demonstration is some legal thing that you engage in under your rights to let people know how you feel about things. Now, whenever we get to a place where the demonstration, more than accidentally, interferes with our operation, I don't think there's any question about it, ceased to be demonstration and became a violation of the law.
I don't recall, since I've been here, as strong a division of opinion as to the wisdom of a policy as now exists with regard to the Vietnamese war. That's true, I believe, in the committee. I think from the reports in the newspapers and magazines that exists in the country.
The economy was turning sour and turning some businessmen against the war. Johnson discussed his decision to raise taxes with a group of federal home loan officers.
I know it's not a popular thing for a president to do, to ask anyone for a penny out of a dollar to pay for a war that's not popular either.
By late 1967, for the first time, a poll showed that a majority of Americans considered the war a mistake.
We know that most people's intentions are good. We don't question their motives. We've never said they're unpatriotic, although they say some pretty ugly things about us. We believe very strongly in preserving the right to differ in this country and the right to dissent. And if I have done a good job of anything since I've been president, is to ensure that there are plenty of dissenters.